right, thanks everyone for attending the November 13th regular meeting of the Upper Canada District School Board. Call this meeting to order and ask that you all rise and join in the singing of our national anthem. Okay, Director, proceed with roll call.
Trustee Buckland?
Present.
Trustee Cartner?
Present.
Trustee Garrow on teleconference?
Present.
Aye, Peter.
Trustee McPherson?
Present.
Trustee McAllister?
Present.
Vice Chair McDonald? Thought I heard him. Vice Chair McMillan?
Present.
Trustee McRae? Chair Petersman?
Present.
Trustee Richards?
Present.
Trustee Swan?
Present.
And Student Trustee Tyler Carpenter.
Present.
Somebody just join us?
Yep. Dan
Okay.
McCray.
Trustee McRae. Okay. We have a motion to approve the consent agenda items. Trustee McMillan. Trustee Swan. Anyway, that passes. Anybody opposed? Oh, here we go. Okay, moving on now to declarations of conflict of interest. Seeing none, look for a motion to move into private session.
So moved.
Trustee McAllister and Trustee McMillan. Go ahead and cast your ballot. Okay. Trustee Cartner?
I agree.
Trustee Swan?
Mine just came up.
Okay. All right, that passes. Thanks, everyone. If I could ask, yes, the cameras be shut off. And, okay. Welcome back, everyone. Do I have a Horizon report? No? Okay, I motion to move into committee of the whole, please. Trustee McPherson and Trustee McMillan. Oops, you gotta go back out and get in the new meeting. I'm not. Oh, I can vote. What would be nice is if it showed who was in, who wasn't. You should send that to me.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Buckland's not here. trustee Richards and trustee Swan. You in favor? You're in favor.
I'm amazed you're able to do this with a man cold.
Oh, well, there you go. I will amaze you. Okay. The first item on our agenda is something coming from our accountability framework, something that discussed in the past doing, and that is looking at our EQAO score. So tonight we have, we've put, since we've decided to do this, we've applied, I think, a fair amount of pressure on our senior team to try to get some of this stuff put together, and they have reacted very well and helped us out. So tonight we have sort of our first go at what the EQAO report will look like for the accountability framework. Now, in discussions and preparing for this agenda item, we decided that we needed to fill in some of the blanks on the story. So some of the data will help us understand where we've been since the advent of EQAO. This by no means is a final rendering of what the EQAO data will look like. There is some data being presented in ways which we have yet to fulfill our obligation to train the trustees to make them more aware, but we are starting to use some of the data structures. And so I ask that not only do you review the report and assess it on the EQAO data and what we're being told tonight, but if you have comments on the structure, would you please send them to the chair of the Accountability Framework Committee, Trustee McMillan. Any ideas or areas where we need to fill in, or pieces of information that we're missing. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the director, and he's going to lead the report, and then we'll have time for discussion and questions. Director.
Thank you, Chair. What you have in front of you, as the Chair has alluded to, is really work in progress as we come around to make sense of of what's being asked us, and also to provide you with authentic material that is not washed with sort of any sort of bureaucratic information. I'd like to first of all thank Victoria for giving us the history of the legal history and the legislative history of EQAO, and you have that across the top, and I think it's important that you see that the attachment that Victoria has applied. She's given you the details of how this began with the NDP, was embraced by the Conservatives, and certainly enhanced by the Liberals, and it would appear to be anyone who wants to drop a bomb in EQAO is going to have to be a pretty solid bomb, because they've got a well-organized, deep-rooted organization. From my perspective, I've always actually appreciated, because the EQAO, different than other large standardized tests that you see throughout North America and Europe, is actually rooted in the Ontario curriculum. It's also not only an assessment of whether the student has been able to be engaged and take the Ontario curriculum with them to meet the grade levels, etc., but it's also really an assessment of how they've been taught, and whether in fact the teacher and the school is embracing appropriately the Ontario curriculum as you go through. And also, it has a performance base for the kids. It'll tell at the end of the day the level of achievement, but that's important, and thank you, Victoria, for that. Phil, thank you for making sense when I sat down with you and showed you what I wanted. Also, thank you, Phil, for the very quick turnaround from the advice that we got at Management Council to reverse this in such a way that we can apply it to each year. Your hard work in turning something around in a day is quite impressive. Thank you. And to Ian, thank you for what you have done today and what you've done over the last couple of weeks to put a application on here that tells you what are the history of interventions and the current interventions being used by our senior staff, our principals and our teachers in our classrooms to respond to what the EQA results tell us about this particular part of the instructional purpose of what's going on. So what you have in front of you is a quick look at an overview, a sort of helicopter quick look at the history of the EQAO and where it's gone. And that will be something that the chair has asked for, and I think it makes a great deal of sense. That will add a layer to this story every single year as you go through. And when the trustees receive it, it won't be like new information. It'll say, here's the next year as we go through. Also, I've asked Victoria to speak first. Victoria, is there any details that you'd like the trustees to hear through the chair about the history of the EQAO that is applicable to us? And I don't want to put you on the spot, but you know so much about it. Why don't you give us a bit of an overview of where EQAO wants to go and where they currently are?
Through you, Chair, I think probably the most salient points are when EQAO was actually created and out of the Royal Commission on Learning, that it was with all party support. And though that may waver over time, and there are different inputs and different feelings about it during its tenure, it was certainly created with full party support and continues to be well supported by the auditor. When the auditor looks at EQAO data, and though there will be some positions in the province on going to a sample assessment, the auditor speaks very definitively on the need for it to stay as a census assessment, because you don't get from sample assessments what you would get from a census assessment. So I think that's a significant context on its history. I think its future, and it's going into a strategic planning session right now, will be in the online environment. There is a time frame for taking all the assessments online, which is absolutely crucial and is what most jurisdictions are doing around the world in this area. And I think that will actually enhance the performance aspect of it, because technology has advanced tremendously to support what you can do online. So I think you're going to see attention from EQAO on moving to the online environment in the future, which will be positive. And I think you'll also see a focus on what will be a broader set of critical thinking and problem solving, which actually we know from work done in other jurisdictions, technology is actually able to enable you to do.
Thank you. My notes that I'll share with you, I'll do at the end, but I'd ask Phil to perhaps talk about, he has a layer to this for our trustees to take a look at that we're, in a sense, you'll be able to see the layer, the appendix, that the attachment 4. Phil, would you like to comment through you, Chair?
Yeah, thank you, David. Briefly, just to take trustees through the format of the graphical information that's provided in your package. As David alluded to, it's entitled Attachment 4. It's really just a way of viewing the numerical data that's on the front cover page of your package, which is entitled A Chronological View of EQAO and the Upper Canada District School Board. You'll see on that front page that we've provided strand by strand information about the board's results in comparison to the province over the past 10 years. The graphs that we've provided as attachment 4 are simply another way of looking at that data. You'll see that we've got some line graphs. That's a more traditional approach to presenting EQAO, which shows the percentage of students over a 10-year period for each of the strands that are at provincial standard, that is levels 3 and 4. And we provided 2 lines to compare provincial results against alongside board results. Following that, we've got a bit of a different format for you in this package, showing stacked column graphs. The intention there is to give you an indication of the strand by strand results, again comparing the board with the province, but that view allows you to look at the information or the results on a level by level basis. So we have different colored categories for level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, and then a color indication for the percentage of students that were exempt or that there was no data recorded. And the final 2 pages show graphs specific to OSSLT, which has a different color category because OSSLT doesn't work from levels, it works from successful or non-successful. So we have both the method 1 and method 2 OSSLT results provided for you graphically as stacked column graphs. Method 1 showing the percentage of successful and unsuccessful students as a percentage of the total students eligible, and method 2 showing it as a percentage of only the students that actually wrote that particular assessment. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. At that point, when we were working through this together, Ian has crafted a piece that shows the history of where different interventions were created. And Ian, would you like to talk a little bit from your perspective about how EQO has informed the work of your department and what you're looking at?
So I'm speaking to the bottom line on attachment 1, which are initiatives that have occurred in response to EQAO. We also work in a larger educational community. We work within the province because it's a standardized curriculum. So there are pieces of that work that are supported provincially but get put into play locally. So I've tried to put some of the major initiatives that we believe have been in response to EQAO results. What may also be helpful, and maybe I'll get Lisa to help me, I'm looking for the attachment that has the glossary. So I have terms there, for example, beginning of the Student Success Initiative. So I provide a supplementary document. Can you just tell me the attachments for reference?
It's attachment
Number
1, and it's glossary.
So attachment 1, that will give you greater detail as to what the Student Success Initiative entails, as does balanced literacy, the special education review, etc. So that's just a little more detail so that you have the context. I know we're known to use titles and terms and acronyms as if they're part of common knowledge, but it doesn't hurt. So hopefully that glossary gives you a little more context to interpret what we're talking about on each of those things. Would you like me to move into the attachment 3 with
Yes,
the
please.
questions? Okay. Also included as attachment 3 are, I guess, our first cut in trying to respond to questions presented to us by trustees. And there was an 8-question framework, and I'll try and just give you the Coles notes, if I may, regarding those. So the first question is, what do the results tell us? We actually have 6 EQAO measures that we look at: primary literacy, primary mathematics, junior literacy, junior math, grade 9 mathematics, and grade 10 OSSLT. And so there are different results and there are different learnings from each of those EQAO assessments. So really the responses to these questions, the suggested approach here was to actually just make a table where we identify the assessment and then try and apply that question to that particular assessment. So for example, we continue to be pleased on our results in both primary and junior literacy. Those continue to be strengths, and if you look at our long-term graphs, we've had a fairly sustainable trend in both those areas over time. So we're really pleased with the growth of our programs and our instruction over those periods of time. If you look at junior math, that represents a real sore spot for us, both locally and provincially. Junior mathematics is an area of concern. That's an example where we really feel that we need to put the bulk of our attention and focus. Grade 9 mathematics results are not without concern, relatively static, and grade 10 OSSLT is another area where we're focusing our efforts. So the trend, again, primary literacy, junior literacy, positive trend, nice growth trajectory, not just over the last couple of years, but over many years. Very pleased with our growth there. Again, as I've articulated, the math is an area of focus, as is the OSSLT. Some of the questions, there's another question that was, what were the expectations? And actually, we were expecting to do well, to continue to do well in our primary literacy and junior literacy. We feel we have strong teacher efficacy, and we have a history of success, and that's, it's success breeds success, I guess. So we're expecting to do well. Some concerns in math. We had a couple of things. We actually ran a number of pilot sites where we tried to do some different things in our professional learning model. So we were really expecting that, that our pilot sites would perform better than our kind of control sites that weren't having that. And we were pleased that 70% of those pilot sites had the best result that they'd had in the last 5 years. So that was promising that we had some success that maybe we could build on. Not really expecting significant changes in OSSLT or grade 9 mathematics. That was an area that was of concern based on some of the circumstances of last year with some of the political climate. So didn't really have an expectation for significant improvement in that area. So what's the story? And I think I've summarized this before. Our teachers are quite talented at the instruction of literacy. Many have reading specialists, they have backgrounds in literacy. They do that really well. As Director Thomas alluded to in one of his former stories, math is, we have some exemplary math instruction in this board, don't get me wrong, but in terms of looking at across the district, we see that there's a lot of work to do in supporting our teachers to grow both their confidence and their competence in supporting students in mathematics instruction. The grade 10 OSSLT is interesting because our students do well in the junior and primary divisions, and then the OSSLT results, quite frankly, are disappointing. So that's really a secondary area of focus for us. So the next part is why or why not did we meet the expectations? Again, we really focused on literacy for a number of years. That was a result of a lot of focused PD, a lot of resourcing, great support, and actually great interest because many of our teachers identify with that as a passion. And so we expected to continue there. When we dug into the math, we have fewer teachers with specialized mathematics backgrounds. Many teachers report that they do not feel confident in teaching the Ontario math curriculum. And I guess the other thing too is we really, prior to this year, had not really taken a systematic focus where we said we're really going to identify where we need to improve and dig in. And so we really responded. We're focusing on junior math. We're focusing on patterning and algebra, and also basic numeracy. Those are areas that the data and our research tell us will be big bang for our buck. We also believe that that is the area where the future mathematics success in grade 9 is maybe breaking down. What you do in grade 6 matters in grade 9. And in fact, there was an EQAO study that showed if you can move students to standard in grade 6, they will hold those gains when they get to high school. And the reason that's important is grade 9 and 10, it's a real dividing point on the student journey. And students who are able to be successful in math have an extremely high chance for successful graduation. Students who don't are at risk of graduation, and in addition, there's a whole world of vocational and future opportunities that come off the table if you don't have that math fluency. And we really believe that we need to resolve that issue earlier in grade 6 if we can. We're confident that we can hold those gains into secondary. Adjustments as a result of our results. I think we want to continue to ensure that we're supporting our primary and literacy developments and not to become complacent there. Really, junior math is where we've pulled out all the stops. We're all in. That's the area that we're focusing. We have every grade 6 teacher involved in our professional learning program. It's a very ambitious professional learning program. It's happening in classrooms with teachers, and it's happening on a regular cycle throughout each month of this school year. We would see that being at least a 3-year journey of intensive focus. We would then work to spread both backwards and forwards, so going back to the primary division and moving forward to grade 9 mathematics as kind of a going forward adjustment. Right now, just as we kind of took a year to really dig into mathematics at the elementary level, we're doing the exact same thing in secondary. So we're looking at cross-curricular literacy in the intermediate division. We're working in every single secondary school with the school's literacy teams. So it's a real partnership between system and school staff. And really, this is the year where we roll up our sleeves and really try and come to a greater understanding about what some of the issues, challenges, and opportunities are there. Are there any wins? Pleased to report in primary literacy, Legan, Lynn, and Maxville, 100% of students achieved a provincial standard in writing. In primary mathematics, 8 of our schools had a year-over-year improvement of 15% or more. In junior literacy, 12 schools had increases of 15% or more in reading. I talked about 70% of our prototypical pilot schools had 5-year highs in junior mathematics. In grade 9 mathematics, 26% of students were achieving provincial standard in grade 9 applied math. That jumped up to 55% after a year's work. Perth and District Collegiate went from 17 to 44%. Rideau went from 47 to 73. So when you aggregate the results, sometimes those very successful stories get masked when you ball them all together. So it's great to be able to tease those out. Rockland and VCI demonstrated very good results and positive trends in grade 10 OSSLT. So those are some things to celebrate. Another question that you asked are there any new risks? One of the challenges is we really are digging into math and focusing on that. So you're saying, when I'm focusing on that, you know, am I going to let the ball drop into the literacy area? So that's one thing. There's another important thing here is, in as much as we want our students to succeed on EQAO, it doesn't represent all of the curriculum. So for example, EQAO does not measure oral language. And yet oral language is foundational to developing effective reading and writing. So if you just focus on the EQAO piece and not the Ontario curriculum, I think we're going to do our students a disservice. And we need to know that working on oral language, even if it isn't measured by EQAO, may actually help our students to be more successful on EQAO. So that's a risk that I think we have to manage. In looking at some of our grade 9 mathematics with declining enrollment, teacher qualification, expertise, and experience, you have a smaller pool of teachers. So, you know, having somebody that's a real solid, experienced math teacher, that's a bit of a risk over time, just in terms of the way that we are obligated to staff with a smaller labor pool. In junior math, one of the risks here is we're asking teachers to confront very different pedagogy than maybe they experienced as students or that they had. And if I were to take you out and work on your golf swing right now, I might give you a correction that actually would be a better swing. But it may, for a period of time, actually hurt your swing until you develop your fluency and competency in that new way. So it's not an instant good. Sometimes there's a little bit of a dip as people really start to master the skills of doing something dramatically different. So those are some of the risks that were identified. I think that kind of summarizes your questions.
Thank you. Finally, to pull together and take comments or questions from these, I have some, I've put some comments down for myself, but what I've seen from my position as a senior officer of 2 boards over the last, I was never a teacher or a principal when EQO started. I was a supervisory officer, but I was very, very concerned when I was in Peel and about how my schools would do. You may be aware, when this first began, I was a superintendent. I had the Malton schools up there in Mississauga where the planes all land, and I was very conscious that these might become a way of people judge schools and judge communities, and we worked very, very hard to make sure our EQA results were very, very strong. And that was something that happened and we're very, very proud of, but perhaps was a real focus of the school district that I was in, particularly my superintendency. When I took a look here, my first visits here to Eastern Ontario, many of the teachers and even senior officers felt that perhaps EQL was really a suspicious thing. It was really a test for Greater Toronto, and as you go through. And I'm not sure, I remember one comment made by a principal in one of my visits early was that, you know, Dave, you think this EQO is so important, but other superintendents tell us really it's just something we do for Toronto. And I realized at that particular time in my entry that I had to bring up the status of this. And what happened was, you may remember as trustees, I was on a real campaign to say, this test may not be important to you, but it's important to the rest of us. And let's make sure our kids are ready for it. But I still remind you of a day one time up at Lanark. I was in a classroom, one of the very, very best classrooms you'd possibly see. It was an absolutely inviting classroom at Queen Elizabeth. After leaving the classroom, I spoke to the principal. I said, this classroom must do really well at EQO. And I found out that for several consecutive years, the teacher, this very teacher is retired now, booked off sick the entire EQAO. She disagreed with it fundamentally. She didn't want to teach it. She didn't want anything to do with it. And it was very difficult for the principal to work in that situation. And this had happened for several years. This was a type of response, although some of this was in different low-key spots. It was, I think, regular in some territories in northern and eastern Ontario that have a great suspicion of EQAO. When the 9 and 10 assessment came, one of my concerns as a senior officer was that we have kids by the time they get to grade 9 and 10 are almost tested out. They have had enough spelling tests and enough other things that the very anxiety of placing a provincial test in front of them causes difficulty, and we have to work at that in preparing for kids who are anxious about things. But the fact is that I think one of the responses that we made with the Ontario curriculum was to create the course that was created for grade 10. And so if you didn't pass the test or you didn't really feel like giving the test you could take the course. My concern with that is that we've had great results when our kids do the test. But the kids who would rather take the course, my concern when you take the course, you're only allowed 34 courses. When you use one of them to this, it takes I think a very important potential credit away when you don't say, let's make sure the test is done well instead of doing the course. I think it took some pressure off the performance on the test, and I think we should, I know at some schools, the principals and the staff really encourage their kids, don't waste a credit on taking the course. Get the test, you can do it, you can pass it as you go through. One of the difficulties that we have been able to work with now with the 7 and 8s in the high school setting, although taught by elementary teachers, is that we now have an ability that when they do the grade 6 assessment and they go on to 7, they're in the school with the grade 9, 10 teachers, and there should be more discussion about preparedness for that and what were the implications of the grade 6. And as we move to consolidate the work that we did in Boundary 2020, this should help us. The other piece that has always, and it's probably a better word than annoyed, but I'll use the word annoyed, has always annoyed me, is the perception that somehow this is an out there test. And although Ian's absolutely correct, it does not measure oral language. It is a test into our curriculum. It's what the teachers are supposed to be teaching. It's what the teachers should be dealing with. And there's no surprises there. And I think that Victoria would tell you, with her years working with you, is that they take the very samples and the test work comes from what the teachers are teaching or should be teaching as we go through. The fact is, I think, and Ian alluded to this, one of our fears is a potential obstacle for us. When we ask our teachers to really focus on their math in the primary and junior division now, is there potential? We have seen a pattern over the years when a board or a school system takes a focus on a subject-related area, some things fall by the wayside, and one of my concerns is that this strong pattern that we have of great work with our language arts and our literacy programs, it might be compromised. I hope not. I hope we have the ability to multitask and really talk about the importance, but that also ties in with something we've been doing over the last couple of years, and that I'm very, very proud of it. We have been working at changing the culture of our classrooms, so our classrooms are more engaging for kids. I'm suspicious that perhaps that had an impact, that the teachers thought that perhaps David and Ian and the senior team and principals didn't think EQA results were really important, and they are, but I think sometimes the message that you give, that I give, have to be balanced and be important. And finally, upon reflection, I think that these were very good questions that the trustees have asked us, and as I've been saying all along, the better and more focused the question, the better that we can respond to it. Personally, I'd like to, Chair, if I can take a moment. As you know from our management council meeting, some of this stuff was turned around very, very quickly because we had quite a raucous debate about how this would be presented, and both Phil and Ian had to go back and do some serious juggling of things. I'm not sure when you did it because I watched you all day long working very, very hard. I assume you must have done this till midnight last night. I'd like to thank you for your professionalism. I'd like to thank you for your commitment to your board, and thank you personally for your hard work. And there you have it, and it was good work. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. All right, thank you. Just as a note, before I open it up for questions, so going forward next year, obviously this one here, the chronological view would get another column for the the current year, so it'll have 2013-14. And then we'll get an updated of the questions and any additions to the story or programs would be added to the reports as well, and obviously we would get an updated set of charts every year. Okay, so comments, questions about our EQAO work being done? Trustee Swan?
I want to thank you for the work you've done on this, through your chair, Ian and team. I'm really glad that this board is taking this to heart and looking at the numbers and the stories and the questions behind the numbers and how we can improve upon areas where we may be weak, such as math, and look at the reasons for why. And I think it's really good that we're also supporting our teachers that may not feel comfortable teaching a subject such as math, to become more comfortable. And I think that training is a great idea. The only place that I get a little confused is through your chair to the director. In your report, you said we don't. Wait, let me get this right. We don't teach a test.
Yeah.
But it's part of the curriculum, and this is where I find when I was looking at the EQAO recently, some people believe or some areas appear to be teaching the test in our board. So can you just explain that a bit further?
Thank you through your chair, Trustee Swan. We have places that I'd like to think are not teaching to the test. If you teach the entire curriculum accurately and reflectively, you are in fact teaching to the test. What I'm concerned with, and I don't see a lot of it, but I have seen it, and it concerns me, is when we have teachers doing practice test taking, and it seems to start real early, and I think there's a role for helping kids learn how to test take, but I don't think that you spend the year sort of teaching kids to take the test for grade 3, and that concerns me. And I go back to, for example, we have four of our schools have been recognized over the last couple of years, probably as much as any board in Ontario by EQO for their outstanding work, and Lagan most recently that Trustee Buckman referred to. But I would take you into that school or take you into Maxville, and the teachers are teaching the entire curriculum, the kids are performing well, and the other thing that's happening is that if there's any test preparation, they're sharing that with the parents as much as they're sharing that with the kids. Because one thing we've learned is that you just sort of throw a test in front of the kids and they don't know, well, what's this all about? Strange. That their performance may be compromised. There should be some preparation, but in no way should it be. And that concerns me. And what you see from me hearing from our senior team and from the principals, that is not acceptable as you go through. Yes, there are some places in the province and perhaps in our own jurisdiction where the teachers are obsessed with that piece, and they shouldn't be. As Ian said very eloquently, there are other parts, the arts, the phys ed, all the other, they cannot be compromised by this as well. It should be handled the right way. But you're right. I think what we're saying is that they should not be test driven and somehow thinking they have to teach to this test as they go through, or any other test for that matter.
Something else? And is there, you said some places we have shared it with the parents. Is this going to be encouraged as part of this review?
Yes, I would. From when we look at our highest performing schools, the parents are very engaged. If you're at Lagan, the parents are very engaged to from everything we're saying. EQO week is coming up. Let's make sure the kids get lots of sleep. Let's give this the proper space it has. If you've got a series of dentist appointments, let's give it a break here. Let's let the kids perform at the very best we can. And so those things are. But I do know that again, Lagan, Lynn up the road, they'll have a night where they go through an EQO assessment with the parents, so they know exactly what's going. We had one school that took a previous test that was all through that was encouraged by EQO through their website, and they actually had the parents going through this, and I remember several dads saying, I'm sure glad I'm not in grade 6 as you go through, and it was because that's the new curriculum, and quite frankly, as Ian spoke about, the new grade, it's not new curriculum, but the fact is, if you've got an arithmetic-based program, and you've spent great drill and skill stuff with the kids, you've not set them up very well for this, and that is not the entire curriculum. And as Ian spoke about eloquently, there's much more to this, and that you should have your geometry and your, and the pre-algebra, the things we're moving kids through, those are things. And as you've said already, and in your comments, we have teachers who are quite concerned that they never came to teaching to have that, and here it is as part of 30% of their week should be in this particular curriculum area, and it scares them.
Trustee Buckland?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a comment and then a question about some of our new risks. In a time when there are external examinations in grade 13, I can recall some of the great teachers I had saying, well, this is an important issue, as appeared in the last 6 or 10 times, but they always went beyond just the basic questions, so the teaching was there. The second point is the question, could you, Mr. Chairman, through one of our superintendents, list some potential factors on staff load as a new risk in junior math? We have it listed here.
Through you, Chair, I think that the complicated Ontario curriculum could be used by someone to say, I'm really, really busy. But I would argue that EQA understands that. I think their assessment takes into consideration, and what they are looking for is a balanced curriculum in a well-organized pedagogical practice in a classroom, where you have recommendations, provincial recommendations, and that how much time is spent on language, how much time is spent on social studies, how much time is spent on phys ed and the arts. Those would all be there, and in a high-functioning classroom, like several of yours at Lagan, all of those things are being met. And I don't hear people saying, well, it's too crowded, the curriculum for me. What I'd ask there, we have people in the field right now. Ian knows what's going on, and I know that Victoria can respond too, to the question of, is it a crowded curriculum? How does a teacher get out of it? If I heard you, Trustee Buckland, asking that question.
Well, to follow up, I think the curriculum part I could see in the crowding, but I'm just thinking about some other potential ones. I wonder if the staff could list staff load. I'm not clear. Other than curriculum, there's something?
Through you, Victoria, Ian and Victoria, could you respond?
If I may, the staff load comment, and that probably deserves more clarity. In the junior mathematics program, we have 5 math specialists that are out in our schools daily. So they're traveling across this district. It's very intense work. It's a lot of cognitive load. They're fabulous people. They're giving everything they have to that, and just quite frankly, with that kind of intensity of focus, we just want to make sure that we're giving these people the right balance they have. They're very dedicated, but again, it's a very ambitious training schedule that we're pursuing right now. I think also at the school level too, we're trying to really have a focus in mathematics. There are other things that staff need to do, right? Other subjects that need to be taught, relationships with parents, attending to the caring and nurturing of students. So it's just making sure that we're right-sizing our effort in light of all the things we're asking people to do.
Victoria?
Trustee McMillan?
Through you, Chair. I agree with Trustee Swan. I want to thank the team for taking this discussion to the level that gives the trustees the information that we need to assure that we have confidence in exactly what you're doing. And I think I'm speaking also from accountability framework, that you've taken us to the level of being able to look down on this entire situation. We know where we are, where we've been, we know where we're going, we know the obstacles, and it gives us the ability to speak on this issue to our constituents, to anyone that asks us, and speak with such confidence that we know and we're assured that things are happening the way they should be happening. Not that we didn't think it was, it's much clearer. And having been a part of that meeting the other night with Management Council and asking for some of the graphs to be done, for example, the stack graph, what that did is provide more clarity for us. And I thank you for the hours of work you must put into it, but it certainly gives us a level of understanding that we as a Board of Trustees need in order to be able to address this topic in an intelligent and in a way that shows confidence. So thank you so much for that.
Chair?
Go ahead. Yeah, actually, Trustee McAllister, I'm going to come to you after Trustee Karkner. Trustee
Thank you.
Karkner.
Thank you. A couple of things, Chair. To the Director or to Mr. Carswell. Why are we working with grade 6 now, and why aren't we working with the grade 4s? In preparing them for grade 6. I know that there's a 2-year lap there as to when they'll become grade 6, but why isn't the focus on grade 4 as opposed to grade 6?
There was a lot of discussion about where we needed to look. It was decided that really there was the greatest uncertainty about what was happening between 3 and 6, and felt that we wanted to go at the known point of where we had the problem, which was grade 6, and work backwards from there. Yeah, we debated starting in primary. It really was the uncertainty about what's happening in grade 6 that took us there. And we may very well find that we maybe need to go to grade 7 next. That may be part of our learning from being in that grade, but we wanted to give it the scrutiny, that testing year.
Trustee McAllister.
Thank you, Chair. Notwithstanding my concerns about EQAO and standardized testing in general, it's good that we are doing this analysis, and I appreciate the report and I appreciate the answers to the questions that we framed. But I think we must never forget that classroom work, not EQAO, classroom work is designed to help students to use the whole curriculum. And I'm really looking forward to next year's report, and I hope that there really will be a correlation between all the school success plans and EQAO testing.
Okay, thank you, Trustee McAllister. Any other comments? Trustee Karkner?
Chair, I was just curious, maybe this isn't the right time to ask, and you can stop me whenever. As I was reading through these attachments, I looked at it and thought, there should be one more page that I would like to have as a trustee to be able to answer the people that ask me, what are we doing about the poor EQAO scores in their eye, as to what remedies we are putting in place, and Mr. Carswell referred to having these 5 math specialists tonight out into the system. Well, that's the first I've heard of that. It would be nice to know just what is happening besides 5 specialists going out into the system. How are you going to achieve those end results? The improvement.
I think we did have a math update. I'm not sure whether specifically the 5 were referenced in that. We'd have to go back and look, but we did get the math update last year. I think when was that? Can you find that agenda? Anyway, we'll find it for you. So if I could just help understand, so you're looking for more detail than what's in this report?
As to the what is being done. I know that there are things being done. We've seen that in the report. But it's the what is being done. You know, maybe that's not part of what has been asked through management council. I don't know, but I just thought, knowing that there's 5 specialists out in the system makes me feel good that they're out there supporting our teachers who are afraid of the curriculum that they have to teach.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I mean, director or anybody else who wants to jump in. When we went, like there's obviously a bit of a trade-off. I'll talk about sort of where maybe we didn't push for more when we were getting the report ready. Was that obviously there's a certain level that we operate at, and you know, at what point does it get down so deep that it might make sense to you, but is it going to really help? But we have to find that balance. So I guess that's the issue. Now, the mathematics report, I think probably would have been, what we can do is link it back. It was done on April 10th, 2013. And, so it was a report, a 15-page report delivered by, Ian, I think it was, on that. So maybe we can link that back to the report so that that's easier for us to find. Director, do you have?
Well, I guess this is what you have to direct us at, is what level, yeah, how deep the dive is and the minutia that you wanna get into. Because we can give you the names of the 5 people too, on those types of things. And, again, the governance level, those are things that if you ask for, we can give, as you go through. And when you ask the question, there's no secrets here, is that, the biggest one is that the vast majority of primary and junior teachers, and I say vast majority, it's a pejorative, it's truth, this is not their strength area. This is not why they went to the Faculty of Education. They love to teach, but we had many, and we've done the inventory, many have not had a math experience since high school. And now they're teaching, so this is where we're at. We understand that the most important thing we think the trustees have, we are training staff to teach mathematics, and and we're pulling at all stops. And I think I want to alert the trustees. I'm often concerned when you go that level that you lose your balance. And as Trustee Buckman was saying, there's art, there's phys ed, there's science, and there's all the things that kids should be taught. And I think Mr. McAllister on the line was saying a balanced and responsive curriculum is critical to the success of the overall child. And those things are all there too. So we're going to go hard at this one because it's a provincial, it's a local, it's a parental issue that you go through. But we have other people standing back saying, why aren't you doing this and why aren't you doing that?
Anything you want to add? So perhaps if there's something specific, or I don't know, maybe if you think of something after, just let us just email Jeff, or we can talk about it at the accountability framework meeting as well too. We'll put it on the next agenda of the framework meeting just to go over it. And get some more feedback. So thanks, Trustee Carpenter. Who else? Trustee Swan.
I guess just to take off on something Trustee McAllister said about the importance of classroom work. But I think this is a big concern of mine, is how does a parent know that the work is being taught in the classroom to the curriculum? For an example of whether it be English or math, if a child gets the highest mark on every report card that's on that report card, yet you get the EQAO and they're not meeting provincial standards, does that mean it wasn't taught in the classroom? Does that mean the child had a bad day at school, we're sick? You know, it opens up a ball of wax. And I guess my big thing here is, if I'm starting to support EQAO testing, which I was very much against, but the one thing I would really like to see, and I know we have a survey, is if they're giving parents the marks and showing the graphs how their child placed, then can the parents not see the questions to see the areas where the improvement's needed? And that's just taking it one step forward to a ministry level, I think.
Director?
Yes, you can. Trustee Swan, first of all, you answered much your question in your comments. The parent who really understands what their child is doing takes the interest in saying what happened at school today, and not the oh nothing mom, but goes a little deeper, saying, well, what were you working on? Can I see the things? And has made a serious connection with their teacher to know that I'm expecting from a teacher regular reports that tell me how my son or daughter is doing. They get information. But as you have said yourself, we have with this particular some teachers go and really take this to the level where they have a classroom night. The parents come in and we're going to talk about what's going to go on with the test. They'll give sample questions. They'll even give, these are teachers and principals that will say, like Westminster with Ray Westdorp, is that they say, here's the site, here's the parent part of the site to go to, this is how you can see previous questions. They even have a section on there for the parents going to here, try and do the test, which really, sort of takes, boy, these kids and the curriculum is really tougher than I ever thought it would be. Those are really good things to do. Not everyone will do it, and quite frankly, from my perspective, there's a lot of parents who say, well, let's get through this week and move to the other stuff. Now, on your other, you spoke with, there are a number of reasons why some kids are classroom performers, then you put the test in front of them, and this is very awkward and difficult. But we have to become, as a board, as a classroom, as a school, is sensitive to learning styles and perhaps anxiety issues that go. We have a number of kids, and we think it's in the neighborhood of 30 to 35% of our kids who, even by the age of grade 2, exhibit test anxiety issues. And so if you're already test anxious and you're in grade 2, grade 3, what's it going to be like when you get up to grade 9 and 10 as you go through and you say, I never do well in tests? Here's another example. And that's one of the reasons why I know we created the course. But at the same token, I think what we have to start to do with our parents is really work with this with our kids to understand this is a part of going through school, and we're going to work with this together. And I think as we get more precise and better at what we're doing, which we are, is having teachers having that night with their parents to talk about as they go through, so that they can have the same sort of understanding of what's going on, and then take the mystery away from the son or daughter with your communications and the type of communications moms and dads would have. But we still know it's an issue, and there's several teachers around the table. I think will always continue to be issues. Some kids, and I've seen them when I was a teacher, sitting like who just freeze up, the pen just gets, everything's going solid, and they look at the first question, there's 42 to go through, and they go, oh my goodness, and the teachers who do the test preparation, not teaching the test, saying, move to the questions you get, come back to the questions you're going to come back to, and so forth. Those are things that the teachers effectively do. And I'm hoping more of that will come online as we go through. So I think that as a parent, I would not, the most important report is the report card. That's the single. And for us, I remind all of us around this table, no matter how important your quiz, the single most important issue for us is the high school diploma. We're getting our kids along the way to get that, the most important certificate that we give out is that diploma, and that's where the children should be moving along as you go through. So that's the balanced view as you go through. And there are a number of kids I've seen over the years. I've seen intellectually gifted kids who score very poorly on the standardized format because of a variety of issues. I've seen other kids who the mom and the teachers go back, my goodness, look at the score here. I don't even think the kid's listening. And there his performance is as such. So I think it's individual in many cases.
I think the point that Trustee Swan raises, though, and I think it's probably understandable when there seems to be a lack of correlation between report card data and EQAO data. And so, yes, your explanation, that some kids respond well to that kind of testing, but then that leads us, or even the whole province, to then say, well, then how accurate is the EQAO results if it is prone to certain styles of learners not being particularly good at it, because we have differentiated instruction and assessment in our classroom, so there's an effort made to try to understand whether the student understands whatever the curriculum topic is. EQAO comes at it from one standpoint, right? One way. And so that's sort of always been out there, and I'm not saying you have to answer it, but that's sort of the question that's always left out
because
there.
that piece. Victoria, I'd like to engage you in this because you really have got that answer for Trustee Swan even better than I, and I know you do. If I was a teacher in grade 6 or grade 3, and Bobby or Rajiv or Rachinder or Sally was a level 3-4 child and level 4 in all their performance, and I see it in their daily activity, I see it in their written responses, I see it in their conceptual work, and I see it in what they're doing, and then I see EQA results that were really off the wall poor, I would then dig into the test. I would take a look at what went on here and start to ask some critical questions here and take a look at this as to what it was. And what the teachers do, and when they take a look and they say, here's my report card results, and they regularly do with comparison, I wonder what was going on there. Now, the vast majority, there's a tight correlation. Someone who's working level 3, 4, and all the other subject areas there are 3, 4 in the assessment. But if you saw something in both ones, I spoke to trustees one, a high performance from someone who isn't working well in the classroom, you say, what's going on here? Maybe I have to, as you've said, Chair, differentiate and expect more from Charlie. And then the same token, with someone who has underperformed and your expectations were higher, I'd be asking some important questions there. Now, not to put you on the spot, Victoria, but you have a lot of experience with this. Would you like to comment through the chair?
Through you, Chair, I think often you do see a correlation that makes sense, but I think the key point, as David pointed out, is what principals do when they bring back the data to their school and they dialogue with their teachers. That's exactly what they're looking at. So they look at the EQAO results. They'll say, does that make sense, as David has pointed out? If they don't think it makes sense, then they dig into the questions, they look at the different areas, they explore the different areas. So what I think it gives them the opportunity is a tremendous opportunity to think about student achievement and to think about interventions potentially for students and where they need to make them. So I think schools actually spend a tremendous amount of time once they get the data doing exactly this. And when you sit down with a principal, as we know, they can talk to you about that. We can pull out EQAO data and I can ask a principal, were there any surprises to you? And they can tell you, yeah, we discussed this, we might have been surprised with this, and this is why we thought it was, and this is all about student achievement that the discussions are. So I think they create lots of good discussions. It allows them to have dialogue with parents. And the reports EQAO gives you the opportunity to see where in the actual assessment itself the student may have struggled, potentially, or where in the different areas. And so there's a great deal of information that can be shared.
Go ahead, yeah.
One quick supplemental. I think this is where I feel there may be a disconnect now, is because we have the 7 to 12 model schools. So the grade 6 EQAO gets sent to the other school where their child is no longer in that learning environment. And I'm just wondering, is there anything we're doing here about this, or is there anything that can be done?
Director?
Through you, Chair, this is actually going to be an opportunity for us. One of the main reasons for us to examine the model of 7 through 12 and the K to 6 is throughout the province right now, when you take a look at, and we look at the results comparing high schools with high schools, and you can go back and take a look at this through all things, the Fraser Institute report, is that in the province of Ontario, of the 20 highest performing schools in the province, and this is from 15 to 17 every year come from our separate board system. And some people have attributed that to uniforms, some people have attributed that to character and ethics and morals and all those other things. My deep look at this as a professional who's been involved in data all my life is if you dig a little step deeper and you look into the schools, of those schools, almost all of them are 7 to 12, every single one. And so, as you've alluded to, is there potential disconnect that the 6 results don't make it to grade 7? Well, that could very well be the case. But in those schools that are high performing, is that the results get to the secondary school, the principal and staff take them very seriously, and then, as Ian described, the 7s and 8s are spending a great deal of time working on that in what, filling gaps, meeting pedagogical things, and then getting the kids ready in the for the grade 9, working with the staff. The other issue that we have, and this is to go a little further, is when I have taken a hard look at those high-performing secondary schools that have steady results, in our coterminous separate boards and so forth, they have one union. And where we have I'm not purporting one union or one thing, that's not what this is about, but we do know that the elementary have a certain way that we have in second. And what we have to do right now is bridge that gap between the 7s working with the 9s and 10s, and so that we create, and right now I can say with a great deal of confidence that is really beginning. And I know that there's several of our schools now that have created their study teams that link the 7 and 8 teachers to the 9 and 10s, and so there's a lot of collaboration going on between the two. And I'd like to think that decision's actually going to help us. But you're absolutely right, through your chair, is that information from 6 has to make it to the agenda at the intermediate level at the secondary school? Good question.
Okay. All right, thank you, everyone. Now, the one thing that I didn't mention, and we have a link to the EQAO site. We'll give you the specific links to the reports for our sites. We'll put that in the report as well. But there is an assumption that we are going to access that information on our own. We're not going to, some of it is redone for us here, but there is an incredible amount of detail in the board reports, never mind what's in the school reports, not only with the numbers, but there's also a huge range of questions that are asked of the students that has some very interesting information. For instance, the 3-6 children in our schools, less than almost half of our kids are rarely read to. So there's all kinds of great information in there. There's another piece of information that in grade 6, 56% of the kids, I think I read, use a computer at home every day. So there's information there that I think I encourage the trustees to assess as well as part of the information. Trustee McPherson?
There's a number here I don't even see in this report. And I'm going to be honest with you, I have always felt we were too wrapped up in numbers like this. I noticed that when we started, there seems to be a small correlation between our starting numbers and the provincial average and our numbers in 2012, 2013, between our numbers and the provincial numbers. What I would like to know is, has our rate of graduation increased with our continued success with the EQAO testing numbers? That's the one that counts to me, that's where the rubber hits the road, so to speak. I know it's not in here.
Through you, Chair, no, it's not a part of this report, but we are increasing at or above the provincial average, and I can give a very accurate information that the report come back. But yes,
Sorry, Bill, I'm not following. What information isn't being provided?
Rate.
Oh, the graduation rate, right. Well, okay. That'll be another report, because it's another one of our accountability framework pieces. So will be coming at some point. I'm not sure when,
but off the cuff, Bill, we're actually moving at a very good rate.
Okay, any other comments? All right, thanks everyone. Thank you, Director.
And thank you to the team.
Thanks to Phil and Ian and Victoria and anybody else who had a hand in this. Thank you very much for help putting this together. And trustees, if you have any comments or suggestions, email Jeff or myself, and we'll continue to adapt the report to make sure it meets our needs. Okay. The next item on the agenda is I wanted to highlight the critical success factors. We voted on them a couple of number of weeks ago, and I wanted just to draw everybody's attention to them, because increasingly as we bring information to the board, that's really the lens that we're going to want to apply. That's what we've indicated to David and his team are the things that our expectations and the things that we're going to want to see results on. Starting the next meeting, we will have our first school presentation. Lombardi will be attending the next meeting, Principal Lombardi, and doing a presentation on the school and how well it's doing in the context of the critical success factors. Many of the schools that will present to us, or perhaps all, will have had full audits prior to coming So they will, this will be a good chance for us to or for them to use the data that's available to inform us. But really, when we get ourselves ready as trustees for these presentations and questioning, it's really going to help if you have a greater understanding of the critical success factors, and so that you can ask questions and that you, of the principal or superintendent when they are here. Obviously, it's not a time to ask, about a parent phone call you had the other day about kids at the school. It's a time to look at how well that school and the confidence level that we have on how that school is doing, and the confidence level we have on their achieving the goals that we've set out. So I just wanted to bring that, put it on the agenda again tonight, and just make sure that I drew your attention to that for the next meeting. Any comments or questions? Do you want to say anything, Jeff?
Just through your chair, Greg will not be at the next meeting, and I will be chairing that. And what I'm going to be trying to do is steer the conversation through the lens of the critical success factors. So if I feel that we're drifting into an area that the school really doesn't need to be addressing, I'm going to pull us back. So I'm just kind of giving you advance notice now that we're working through the critical success factors, we're working through that lens, and as the chair of that meeting, I'm going to try to do my best to make sure that we stay focused through that lens. Good. And not drift into other areas, because if we do, then what happens is it pulls us away from what we have told the schools that we're going to be looking for. They're prepared. They're going to do a fantastic job. I have no doubt about that. And so if you see me steering you, you'll know why. I just want to give you advance notice on that.
Okay. All right. So, guess what? The ministry has sent us another request for consultation. And being always ready to jump when the ministry asks me to jump, we right away started to get this ready for an agenda item. This showed up sometime in October. With the instruction that you had to have all your information back to us before some date before the end of November. My experience is that when you see stuff like this, they've probably got, and then they're going to report all this back to us in January, that they've probably got a pretty good idea what they want to say. In talking to David and in prepping the agenda item through Management Council, we arrived that there was a few areas in the discussion questions that we had already addressed. And it's disappointing at times when we see this kind of piece come out, and yet when we presented them with the report following Boundary 2020, covering many of these questions, we presented them with a very thorough 32-page report on how they could modernize the funding and deal with declining enrollment. We got very little response from them. We submitted it to the work group that was reviewed, led by Eleanor Newman, and on declining enrollment, we submitted it to them. I think we got a verbal thank you for that. But it's frustrating that we are ready to work with the ministry and give them information. But they really turned a deaf ear to us for years. So we're going to submit it again. I guess that's really where I'm getting it. We're going to submit the same report, and hopefully this time they'll look at it and see the wisdom. And had they done something with the report, we'd probably have a new school in Maynard and Winchester and all kinds of exciting things, because we would have been able to use a lot of the money that we did not incur expenses for, because we took the courageous jump to close some of our small schools. So I thought maybe the director was gonna say anything, but he's not. So,
Chair,
yeah,
for information purposes, I was on a conference call at noon today with the Ops Policy Work Group.
mm-hmm,
And I do believe that that issue was addressed and that a submission has been made by Ops to the government in response. And I'm sure that it covers any point that we may have thought of. We may want to include some specific local situations, but there you go.
okay, thank you. Did you want to say anything about this?
Yeah, if I could, I'm sorry, we're going out to get those.
I'm gonna pass them out.
Yes, please, to the trustees. Sorry, John, I was out of the room when you were speaking, so I don't know the context and what you shared. But I do know that the chair and I have spoken at length about this request for feedback and the consultation. We believe the very short turnaround period is, and the fact that it's come from the Assistant Deputy Minister of Education, from the Finance Department, that we're sort of concerned that it really has little to do with education and will have a lot to do with finances. And we'll probably look into some areas that we've tried to help them with, but they have been calcitrant in their response to this. It would appear to some of us, and not to be cynical or jaundiced in any way, is that perhaps this is really not a consultation, but just an opportunity to check the box off to say that they have gone out there and sought some information. Some years ago, we, as a Board of Education, some of the board members around the table were part of that board, and some are part of the new board. But we went through perhaps one of the most courageous boundary reviews in the history of this province, where we, as a Board of Education, being directed by the trustees with the leadership of Charlotte and Phil, and with our senior team and our trustees, examined every single boundary, every single school, and we reflected on relevance, their ability to serve their community over a long period of time, the quality of education received in the community. We took a look at the French programming, we took a look at the special education programming, and we did an extensive realignment of our attendance patterns, our boundaries, and our transportation programs to all of these schools. And what happened at that particular point, the Board of Trustees, in a courageous, difficult decision, 8-3, closed 13 schools and moved an entire system into a common pattern of delivery of education. We never organized any of that to deal with any sort of savings of money. In fact, the call by the chair at that time, Chair Petersma, was that this was not about schools, this is about the quality of education. And he challenged all of us at that particular time to look at the modernization of our school district and to ensure that we were not, through declining enrollment, moving back to something that was pre-1969, where our schools were becoming community schools, or really becoming neighborhood K-8 schools, where you would have 15 or 16 kids in a rural school that one time might have held 200 to 300. With that bold and courageous decision, we were able to consolidate and to supply more attractive programs in French, arts, phys ed, and different things that we're doing now that's showing up in our Upper Canada Cups, the different things that we're doing with our programs that our parents are telling us that their students enjoy. However, after the fact, because of that courageous move, we know for a fact that there were cost avoidances that were created. And in a very compelling examination of that, prepared by Jeremy in consultation with a private group, we were able to look at the fact that over the next 15 to 20 years, the province is going to save $52 million. We presented a case to the ministry that said, if you save the money in your area, it should be spent in your area. And what that we felt as a group at that time when we shared this with the Minister of Education was that if it was saved in your area and you could make the courageous decisions, then spend the money to modernize the schools in that area to bring it up to the speed that the community so desires, because the elected officials made the courageous decision. What you have, trustees, in front of you is a copy some of you have seen before. That's a very well organized document that we have shared with other boards that are also going through the difficult situation with ARCs and the declining enrollment. And we're asking that if this modernization and efficiencies consultation is as true as potentially as it is, which we're concerned whether that is the fact, that they would take our report and recognize that that should become a major part in the financial situation and the decision making that will be made. I've asked Jeremy to be ready to speak to this, but this is one component of it. Through you, Chair, there's a compelling thing that I'm hoping that if they do the consultation, that the right voices are heard, and that we encourage other boards across the province to continue to examine how they do business for their communities.
Okay. Anybody else want to say anything?
Jeremy, do you want to comment?
No, I actually think you covered it very well.
So what we're asking is, what we're suggesting is that that we submit this, which answers not all the questions. We don't have the time to prepare documentation for all of it. And OPSPA obviously will respond in general on our behalf, as Trustee McAllister has said. But we thought specifically that we would resubmit this report to them and see what they say. Trustee Buckland?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. This photocopy doesn't do justice to how official the report looked. It was done up very handsomely. And I had the opportunity to give it to the minister, was the Premier, Premier Wynne, and the rumor was that she tore it in half and took the 50 million saving without being concerned about implementing that particular funding to help Eastern Ontario education. So a reminder will be useful, I think.
Good. Trustee Karkner?
I'm attending an OBSPA program meeting on Friday, and this is the main part of our agenda as well, so this input will be valuable. Thank you.
All right, so we'll just
I'm preparing a letter to go with it, explain why we're giving it to Mr. Sakali.
Okay.
I'm copying you, of course.
Okay. Trustee McAllister, do you have a copy of that, what was submitted on behalf of OPSPA?
No, I do not, Chair.
Okay. If you with your respective committees, if you do get copies, I wouldn't mind, can you send them on to the trustees?
We'll be working on that response on Friday, so we'll get it back. Yes.
Okay. I'd like to see what they wrote. Trustee Buckland, do you have something you want to add?
As a point of information, I missed that little repartee between the two of you as to where this is going at the moment. Is that what you were suggesting?
I will be sending a letter to Mr. Sakali saying we'd like you to relook at this. I'll attach my letter to the version that we have and say that this was already shared with Nancy Naylor, who was then the Assistant Deputy Minister in charge of Finance. And I will send, I have the letter prepared, and then I will copy the Board of Trustees in the letter.
So,
He is the Assistant Deputy Minister of Education Finance.
so we were invited, both the director and I received letters inviting us to respond to this consultation document. So, as our response, this is what we're going to send with a letter. Okay. All right. Guess that means we're done then with committee of the whole. Can I have a motion to move back into regular board, please? Trustee McMillan, trustee Carpenter. All right, we got enough to pass. Trustee McPherson?
Okay.
Trustee Garrow, are you still with us? All right, report from private session. 2 personnel items were discussed and recommendations will come, no recommendations. There were no recommendations coming from private session. Report from public session from October 23rd, 2013. There are 3 motions. Trustee McAllister, you want to move the first one?
Yes, I would, please.
Trustee McAllister, seconded by Trustee McMillan, that the Upper Canada District School Board hereby recognize International Day for People with Disabilities, December 3rd. Any comments or questions? Yeah, Trustee McPherson?
I have a problem with the second part of this, in that we as a board promote inclusion of all students. I have a problem with us separating certain students to recognize them simply because they're exceptional. I attended an award ceremony at one of my local high schools, and all students were recognized for their achievements. There was no award handed out because you were special or you were receiving accommodation. So I actually think we're taking a step backwards as a board that promotes education for all and has made a very specific effort to take the word special out of special education. That's just my comment.
Okay, all right, so your comments specifically deal with the second motion?
That's right.
Okay, so let me just vote on the first one then, and then we can bring the second one up. So on the first motion, moved by Trustee McAllister, seconded by Trustee McMillan, that the Upper Canada District School Board recognize International Day for People with Disabilities, December 3rd. You want to call the question, please? Trustee Swan?
It's not
Favor?
popping up.
Okay. All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone. All right, now on to the second motion. Trustee McAllister, do you want to move this one as well?
Yes, I would, Chair.
Moved by Trustee McAllister, seconded by Trustee Buckland, that the Upper Canada District School Board develop a long-term plan to recognize exceptional Upper Canada District School Board individuals with disabilities in consultation with the Special Education Advisory Committee under the direction of the Director. Trustee McPherson has raised some issues. Are there anybody else that wishes to comment?
Yes, I would, Chair.
Yep, go ahead, Trustee McAllister.
Contrary to what Trustee McPherson has alluded to, the intent of this motion is exactly the opposite. It is one of inclusion, although I recognize the fact that it does, deal with disabilities. But nevertheless, the intent of the CAC committee motion, which I had brought to the last meeting and which is being raised today, is that the stories of these people be told and that they be heard, because sometimes in that envelope of inclusion, they are ignored. And that is the only purpose of this. It's just to tell the story, good news story. Nothing more and nothing less.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Okay, question please. trustee Swan, you're in favor? Okay, all in favor, but trustee McPherson, the trustee and trustee Richards abstains. So that passes, thank you. Now on to the third motion. This is regards to the feasibility study. Trustee Swan, do you want to move this? Trustee Swan, moved by trustee
I'll second that.
Trustee Karkner, that the Upper Canada District School Board ask Student Transportation of Eastern Ontario to undertake a feasibility study to accomplish shared busing targets in a shorter period of time. Any comments or questions? Call the question, please. Okay, all in favor, except for trustee McPherson, who abstains. Okay, that passes. All right, thanks. That concludes the report from the public session of October 23rd. Move on now to our draft audited financial statements. And I turn the floor over to our Superintendent of Business, Nancy Barclay. Do you have any comments to make about this, or do you just want us to vote on?
I have a short presentation.
Okay, good.
If I may, Mr. Chair?
Yep.
Just to give you some history, the financial statements as requested by the Audit Committee in June were completed this year a week earlier than the previous year. So continuous improvement, we keep trying to get a little sooner. I'm pleased to report that KPMG, our auditors, were in attendance on November 5th at the Audit Committee meeting, and we again received a clean, unqualified audit report. In addition, there were no recommendations for management improvements that would be contained in a management letter. So as well, I'm very proud of my team that was accomplished. At the Audit Committee meeting, which is mandated by the Ministry regulation, they are required to go through the audited financial statements in detail, along with KPMG, our auditors, and that did take place on November 5th. So I do have a short presentation to give the Board of Trustees a view of the financial results for 2012-13 with more of a focus on compliance as required by the Ministry. And before I get started, I'd like to introduce members of the finance team who, without me this year, did a wonderful job to complete the financial statements, and they are here to support tonight and answer questions should some arise. So I have Carol McEwen, Manager of Accounting Services. Next to her, Diana Kingston, who is our Assistant Manager of Accounting Services, and Michael Law, Manager of Budget and Forecasting. So they work as a team. So when Michael is here with budget, the others are here to support him. So it's a real team effort. And I must recognize our auditors. KPMG worked very cooperatively with us to ensure that we could advance the timelines by one week. The presentation is very similar to the one last year. And the first slide is focused on ministry compliance. So the ministry's definition of balanced budget determination, which is a one-year view of our results. So if you can follow along on the screen, the in-year revenues, and for compliance purposes, those are different than what you have seen in the audited financial statements. And the difference is that the school-generated funds are not part of that revenue when we're determining compliance. So $348.8 million in revenues. Similarly, expenses excludes school-generated funds, also excludes the famous unfunded liabilities that we are now required to bring into compliance and fund over the next several years. So the in-year surplus that generated for compliance purposes, so by ministry calculations, is about $600,000 for the year 12-13. As soon as a board has a surplus, the board is compliant. However, I've still shown what the threshold would be had we had a deficit, which is $3 million. And as you will see, we still have prior year accumulated surplus available for compliance at $10.2 million, which we didn't need to use because we had a surplus of $600,000. So I'm sorry, I see something's missing from the bottom left of that screen, but what it really says is we're compliant on the $600,000, and the bottom line that's missing is that we are also compliant in our administration and governance envelope, which is a requirement as well by ministry regulation. So if you have perused the audited financial statements that were part of your package, they look quite different from what I showed you on the first page. In that, in our audited financial statements, we actually have an in-year surplus of $5.5 million. The original budget and audited statements are always compared to original budget, which was struck, by the way, in the spring of 2012, so a year and a half ago. We had budgeted a surplus of $1.2 million. I must go back to, at that time, and I believe former Superintendent Gales talked about this, at that time we were learning and didn't have full comprehension yet of what would be required in terms of funding these unfunded liabilities and what would be brought into compliance. So if we were to look at revised estimates, which I haven't brought here, but you would see quite a change from the original budget once we got a handle on what that requirement was. So our in-year surplus from an audited standpoint, and our audited statements that will be published, is $5.5 million. However, to be compliant with the ministry and with all of those adjustments, it brings us down to almost a $600,000 surplus. At the audit committee meeting, we went through more details in terms of how did we generate this $4.3 million surplus compared to budget. We've only just highlighted here tonight a few of the main contributors. And the first one I've already mentioned, employee future benefits. So employee future benefits, the change there was favorable by $3 million versus the budget that we struck in the spring of 2012. And when we did the revised budget, we realized and learned how to budget for the gratuities, given that we had to amortize those and fund them and bring them into compliance over time. So that contributed 1.8 million of the 3.1. As well, with the labor framework requirements, one item that we dealt with our actuary was the CUPE retirement liability. And the actuary wasn't aware that that gratuity is frozen, or that it's called a retirement allowance, is frozen the same as the other retirement gratuity liabilities were frozen at August 31st, 2012. So we had a favorable adjustment there of $300,000, so 0.3 of that 3.1 was attributed to CUPE retirement allowance liability. And the other component of employee future benefits, worth about $1 million favorable, was we had a reduction in our WSIB liability at the end of the year, and again, that's an actuarial evaluation. The previous year it had gone up by about 600 grand, and this year back down by $1 million. So $3.1 employee future benefits contributing to that $4.3 million change. We also had incremental revenue of various kinds. Looks like I didn't bring my sheet. I can go through those. I have another sheet if you want me to go back to that, of $2 million. We had some extra interest income, for example, from the bank, most likely because we weren't in any major construction projects, so we had more cash than normal. Miscellaneous revenue in schools, etc., and that contributed $2 million. Staff development, we actually had some favorability there. We spent less than was originally budgeted by $500,000. And our enrollment went the other way versus the original projection in the budget, and that swung things the other way by $1.3 million. So those are some of the main contributors to the $4.3 million change from the original budget. So this is what you would call the PSAB view. These are the audited statements with the $5.5 million surplus. So now we go back to more the ministry view, and I'm going to go to the last screen and come back. This is what's called the detail of our accumulated surplus or deficit. And this is really the equity section of our balance sheet. And if we go to the very bottom, in the column called in-year increase or decrease, you will see $5.5 million. That's the surplus that we just saw, and that's our audited financial statement surplus. So that has moved our beginning balance of $23.8 million negative, a deficit accumulated, to $18.3 million. So if we move up through the page, you will see things that you've seen before, and you saw these last year, you've seen them at budget time. The in-year change column, school generated funds increased by $300,000 in year, and those remain in this section because they are not available to be used for general budget balancing. They must be kept for the purpose for which they were raised. The interest to be accrued is the interest on our debentures. This is just a timing thing, so when we make our debenture payment in May, this is accrual accounting to accrue that interest for June, July, and August. Revenue will come for that $100,000 that you see there, but it is unavailable for compliance as well. So then as you move on up, the next three, one of them being a zero, and that's really because of rounding, it's about $20-some thousand. Those three are requirements that the ministry has, through regulation and through the forms, forced us to starting in this year, 12-13, to fund those unfunded liabilities for employee future benefits. So out of the $5.5 million, and you move up to the very top, you see the 0.6 of a million or $600,000. That number is the number that you saw on the first page for compliance. So that is what is remaining available for compliance in year. Now I'm going to go back to the previous page, and you see at the bottom the 0.6 again. And that has brought us from 10.2 million of accumulated surplus available for compliance and moved it up to 10.8. So out of the 0.6, we have some of these things are rounded and come back to zero, so they're probably not material enough to talk about. I will talk always about committed capital projects. We're leaving $100,000 in there as internally appropriated surplus because we do not specifically receive funding for any capital work that's required on this building or our regional centers. So we internally appropriate that, and we did it last year, and a good chunk of that was used in 12-13. You'll notice computer upgrade project. we have internally appropriated $1.8 million. That is our cyclical upgrade of computers. And traditionally, we have internally appropriated a third for year 1, year 2, and then in year 3, Jeremy and his team go out and purchase those computers. Money had not been set aside for this cyclical upgrade. So this is a catch-up, if you will, of 2/3 of the anticipated cost of that future computer upgrade. The classroom line is school surpluses. This line has traditionally stayed pretty constant until 12-13, and we have an increase in surpluses of $800,000. So because our procedure practice is to carry forward school surpluses and deficits, and this is net of any deficits, by the way, then we have $2.4 million as the balance there internally appropriated. Not to get into budget time, but the challenging part of this is because the ministry measures us in 1-year windows, this $800,000 that we're carrying forward, we may have the cash in the bank, but for compliance purposes, you can only use accumulated surplus to the extent of 1% if you have a deficit. So really in 13-14, we need to be sure that we can cover these things within the year. So it becomes a budgeting challenge, but that's for another day. Moving up to Workplace Safety and Insurance Board, that's an investment that we've had with Wood Gundy for quite some time in case ever needed for a catastrophe, something like that. The increase of 0.1 is strictly the interest that investment earned during 12-13. So when we move on up, what that does is we started with a $6.6 million balance in our operating accumulated surplus unappropriated, so available for compliance but not earmarked for anything in particular. My system is exposed to risk. Okay. Sorry about that.
That's trickier than very small numbers.
And so that has gone down by 2.1 million to a balance of 4.5, excuse me. Now, looking back at original estimates, again in the spring of 2012, we had budgeted that number would be 2.2 million. Time of revised estimates, when we had more information, it was budgeted to be 3.6. It has ended up being 4.5 million. So this gives you a picture of our equity and where we stand. These last two slides really try to tie the audited financial statement surplus of 5.5 million with the ministry's version of our surplus at 0.6 million. That is the end of the presentation. For some reason, it won't advance.
So you're no more slides, so you just stop talking, or you actually are done?
I'm done.
Oh, okay, all right, it was a little,
I'm done with
it
this
was a little
section.
vague there.
I'm sorry, I don't know why it won't slide ahead, but it was a very brief presentation.
Okay. Would you like us to talk about this now then? You're done?
Sure.
Okay. Any comments, questions, trustees? It's real clear, right? What we need is somebody else to have to report to. Then you have a third set of numbers.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Work on that. Okay, well, that was easy. Do you need this to be, do we need to vote on this?
Annual audit committee.
Yes,
We need to
Please.
vote on this one?
yes.
The audit
gonna vote on it in the audit committee?
Mhm.
Okay,
Are we gonna
Alright.
vote on it later?
yeah, apparently.
Okay.
Make sure we do though.
Oh, I will.
Okay, thank you, Nancy, for your first,
Speech.
your first presentation of the audited financial statements. All right, we'll move now to our next item, which is our annual audit committee, and we'll turn it over to our, oh, he's not here, chair of our audit committee, who is ill tonight, and seeing that Trustee McAllister and Trustee McCray, our other two members of the committee, are on the phone. I've asked Superintendent of Business, Nancy Barkley, to give the report. So, you're up again.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So it's an annual requirement that the audit committee provide a report to the Board of Trustees to describe the work that the audit committee has performed on the board's behalf during the year. So you have the written report in front of you. It follows a template as provided by the ministry. It talks about the audit committee members and also their attendance at various meetings. There was one change this year compared to last year. When we got looking more closely at the requirements for this annual report, we discovered that we should be reporting on meetings from September to August. And last year we reported right into October and November. So it may look strange and may look like we only had one meeting and that it was held on June 4th, 2013, and that Trustee McAllister did not attend. But he in fact was there for other meetings that were reported the last time around. And when we get further into the report, you'll see what was done at those meetings. The report talks about our relationship with our external auditors, the fact that they came to the audit committee meeting June 4th, presented their plan for the audit of the 12-13 fiscal year. They confirmed their independence, meaning no conflicts of interest in order to allow them to perform the work for us. And the audit committee on November 5th recommended the approval of the annual audited financial statements. We also have our regional internal audit team, more particularly the manager who attends our audit committee meetings most of the time. We've had satisfactory relationships with the internal auditors, and during the September to August timeframe, 2012, 2013, they performed an accounts payable and procurement audit. Now I'm back into the meetings. So the audit committee did meet on 3 separate occasions during the year. October 2nd, 2012 and November 13, 2012, which were reported a year ago now in this report, and then the June 4th meeting. I won't go into the details of the June 4th meeting. You can read them for yourselves, and I've already touched on most of that already. So that's the extent of the report, and a summary of this report will be sent to the ministry as per regulation requirement.
Okay, so are there any questions on the
Chair, if I could, please.
Yep, go ahead, Trustee McAllister.
I just want to mention really 3 things. One, and they've been covered by Superintendent of Business Nancy very well. But you know, the popular view sometimes is that the accounts of the board are not very well audited. In fact, they are under rigorous scrutiny 3 ways with the the external audit, the internal audit, and the ministry audit. The second point I want to make is that we spent quite a bit of time as a result of a decision of the board a month or two or several months ago with regard to the high-risk policies and the audit of those policies, and that work is ongoing. And I particularly want to thank Linda Harrison and Barry Curtis, our external representatives who are auditors in their own way and who bring a vigorous scrutiny to the affairs of the audit committee. So that's about all I can say at the moment.
Where were you? How come you missed
do
the
you mean,
meeting? Jeez. No, it's okay. I'm just teasing. All right. Any other comments or questions? Okay. So we have two motions. One to adopt the report and one to adopt the 2012-2013 audited financial statements. I'm going to do the statements first. Trustee McAllister, would you like to move that? No. Trustee Karkner. Seconded by Trustee McMillan, that the Upper Canada District School Board adopt the 2012-13 audited financial statements as presented. Go ahead and...
So who was your first and seconder, McMillan and Carpenter?
Yeah. Maybe the way around, that's okay.
Oh.
Sorry. Okay, that passes unanimously. Second, moved by, need a mover and a seconder for the Trustee McMillan and Trustee Swan, that the Upper Canada District School Board adopt the report and thank the audit committee members for their work. Yeah. Okay, that passes unanimously as well. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Superintendent Ms. Nancy Barkley, for stepping in on behalf of Chair of the Audit Committee, David McDonald. Trustee Buckland, do you have anything to update us on with regards to the Ontario Public School Boards?
Just two things coming up, Mr. Chairman. The regular meeting of directors at the end of this month. Bill 122 will be a hot topic, as well as reports from facility and policy. And then the end of January is our annual public educational seminar, which I would encourage all trustees to attend.
Any comments or questions? Any comments from our committee members? Trustee Karkner?
Just a thank you to any trustees who did fill out the EQAO questionnaire that I sent out on behalf of OPSBA. It will help with the response that is going back to the ministry.
Trustee McAllister, anything you want to add?
Thank you.
Okay.
Remember that.
Okay, that brings us to, do you have anything to add, Director?
I would,
meeting?
yes, just something, I would just like to all the principals who stayed up tonight to watch this, and all of our staffs and our school councils. Our Remembrance Day assemblies that put on by our schools are just phenomenal. I was at GAN, and it was moving, and it was just a fabulous day, put on and organized by the kids. I try to get to schools each time, and it was exceptional. And as I've talked to many of you, you were at special Remembrance Days that went extremely well. And I just think that I know everyone wants holidays and so forth. I know that some places have holidays, but by being at school that day ensures a legacy will continue, and that our veterans and our seniors who some were passing away each year, they're connecting with our kids and the future. I was just very, very proud of of how our system responds to Remembrance Day. Thank you.
Yes, echo that, and also remember the fact that not all our fallen heroes come from wars that we don't remember. We asked our servicemen to go and fight on behalf of our government in Afghanistan and lost near 60 soldiers. So remember those as well. Trustee Buckland, you were at the ceremony at the Battle of Chrysler Park with our Prime Minister, and I just want to make sure that everybody realizes that you didn't actually fight it. Years ago, you weren't a private in the British Army.
I was not. It was very impressive. There was quite a load of students, 2 or 3 buses from the school that Tyler represents, RO, and it was quite impressive. And in fact, it was, as I remember, the same weather on that particular occasion, 200 years later. Cold and wet.
Okay. Motion to adjourn. Trustee McMillan and Trustee Carpenter.
I'd like to
Go
thank
ahead
the
and
chair as
cast
we
your-
get through this meeting with a man cold. It's amazing how he's able to do it.
I feel for him.
You know, you ladies.
I'm in
don't-
favor. That computer just shut down. All right, that passed unanimously. See everybody for our next board meeting in 2 weeks. Our next get together in a week. Take care, everybody.